Welcome in the latest episode of that SEC podcast. I'm your host, Michael Bratton. I go by SEC Mike on Twitter. And that right there is Big Blue Shade, who goes by Big Orange Vols on the Twitter machine. What's up, you old Kentucky homer?
Let's get that orange koozie out of the way, huh? What's going on?
Man, we are marching on with our fall camp. Hell, fall camp's basically started already, Shay.
Yep.
So I'm just calling this 2024 season preview for them Kentucky Wildcats, who I know you are over the moon for. You ready to talk some Kentucky football?
Ready. I'm ready, man. I'll tell you what, there's a little optimism coming down from Kentucky. You can kind of feel it online, and rightfully so. I'm right there with them. So, yes, let's jump into some Kentucky football.
Now, real quick, like we like to do, Shay, let's recap what happened last season. We went 7-6, but you know, that only tells half the tale because we started 5-0, just completely dismantled Florida. And you got to remember, this was not 5-7 Florida. This was a ranked Florida team that had just whooped Tennessee. A lot of people were expecting Florida to win that football game. I mean, it was a dismantling so bad that Billy Napier came out and said, that's a program we want to be. Probably should have fired him that day. You can't have a Florida coach saying that. But then we went 2-5, unfortunately, and it all started by getting whooped by Georgia. Hell, Georgia whooped everybody last year except for Bama. But then we lost to Missouri, Tennessee, Bama, South Carolina. But rebounded nicely by beating a top 10 Louisville team. Still own the state. How about that, Shade? But that's kind of where we were at last year.
Yeah, it's kind of tale of two halves, it felt like. You know, at first we were at the top of the world. The second half, we're thinking we may lose our coach. And then, like you said, we did close it down with an awesome game against Louisville and put them out. So there was some highs and some lows for sure. But I think there is a little bit of that optimism is going to carry over because you saw flashes of it last year. You know, there was moments during the season you're like, man, Kentucky's not that far off. It's just they kept self-inflicted wounds, it felt like, you know, not closing out the close games. Leary just never taking that step forward and progressing like we thought he would. So there was just little bits of that throughout the season. But hey, that's last year, man. Let's talk about this year, brother.
Well, we're led, of course, by Mark Stoops. And how about it, Shane? I don't know if enough people around the SEC realize this, but Coach Stoops is the longest tenured coach in the entire SEC after Nick Saban retired. This is Mark Stoops, so he's seen it all. He's the winningest coach in Kentucky football history. And Shane, he's got a 73-65 overall record. But again, that doesn't tell the full tale because they were so bad when he took over. Took about 4 or 5 years to get that thing going ever since. I mean, this is kind of the golden age of Kentucky football. So if we have confidence in our head coach that has seen it all, to get us around what, you know, I think it's fair to say, Shane, is Kentucky at a plateau right now. No more divisions.
Yeah.
No more catching Mississippi State exclusively out of the West. Kentucky, this is going to be very, very fascinating to see how they navigate the SEC with Oklahoma and Texas now in the league and getting a more full rotation of the schedule. I think that is a defining thing we're going to start to learn about Kentucky this fall.
Yeah, and one of the things I worried about a little bit was I'm not saying they always had an easy schedule, but they had one of the easier schedules every single season. And that gets pointed out when they win 10 wins, you know, but it doesn't get mentioned if they're going, or if Mississippi State's an 8-win program, 9-win, you know, it's like all that stuff goes right out the window. But what does it look like now that you're kind of bumping? I will say this may be the toughest schedule I've seen Kentucky have in a long, long time. So I'm not saying the road is easy by no means, but I will say you got some good football coming.
Yeah, and another reason I think to be optimistic, Shane, a lot of turnover on the coaching staff, but a lot of the Kentucky people we talk to, they're very high on this staff. New offensive coordinator Bush Hamden, he was at Boise last year. He's also the quarterbacks coach. He was OC and quarterbacks coach at Boise. Before that, he was with Eli Drinkwitz at Missouri as the quarterbacks coach up there. Eric Wolford, Shade, name to know, Kentucky fans know it well. Offensive line coach, he's back. He was at Bama the last 2 years, but before that, he was the main man responsible for the big blue wall up there.
Yeah.
So can we get back to the big blue era on the offensive line with Coach Wolf back in the fold, new offensive coordinator, and a new receivers coach, Kel Shorts, who was at University of Houston the last 3 years, Shane. And if it's one thing Houston did, they developed great receivers that would hit the portal and go to a better school, just like Texas added one of them this offseason. So I think there's a very, very realistic opportunity that we have upgraded at all these positions. And before I get a ton of blowback, I had a ton of respect for Liam Cohen, but it always felt like he had one foot out the door and was trying to get to this NFL job, that NFL job. And I don't know. I think him and Mark Stoops towards the end there, I think they were really butting heads. So again, this is not to diminish Liam Cohen, but I think this is probably going to be a better fit for Kentucky football.
I ain't gonna lie, man. I was on that wagon, hook, line, and sinker. They got me. I thought I was kind of high on Kentucky last year. I find myself doing that the last few seasons, but that was one of my reasonings was, hey, man, we got Liam back. But it's just like you said, it felt like it never just went back. It's almost like those you take something apart kind of deals, and then you probably shouldn't have took it apart, but now you're trying to put it back together, and it's just not working correct. That's kind of what this felt like when Liam came back. It was it just never meshed like we thought it would.
Right. And again, with a lot of the staff turnover, so we got a turnover on the offensive side of the football too, which makes Kentucky so intriguing this year. Let's kick it over to the returning production for Kentucky this season. 39% on the offensive side of the football. That's 10th in the SEC, Shane. 0% of the passing yards are back because Devin Leary off to the NFL. Rushing yards, 17%. That's 14th in the SEC with the great Ray Davis now in the NFL. But here's where we shine, Shane. Receiving yards, 61% is back. That's number 5 in the SEC. And the big ugly. Shane, you want to talk big blue wall? 78.3% of the offensive line snaps are back from last season. That's number 2 in the SEC. So we're getting our coach back. We're getting all these snaps back. That's the reason for optimism that Kentucky's offense, I know it's a new quarterback, new running back, a lot of new pieces here, but we got this offensive line, and that's where it starts in Lexington.
Yeah, that's exactly where it starts. This is what Stoops wants to get back to. He's made it pretty obvious every time you've talked to him that it's time to get back to that running game. And you do that by the big uglies up front, something that's been addressed. You got a lot of returning talent, and I think a better offensive line coach. So, yeah, you're in good shape here.
And, Shane, it does not go with enough notice. I think Kentucky may have the best defensive coordinator in the SEC, given what he's had to work with and the results he's got. But Brad White, of course, is back. Maybe a future head coach here. But we are so excited about the Kentucky defense, Shane, because they returned 83.6% of the defensive production. That's number 1 in the entire SEC, Shane. Tackles, 77% are back. That's number 3 in the SEC. Tackles for loss, 82% are back. That's number 1 in the SEC. Sacks, 82%, number 1 in the SEC. Interceptions, 91%, number 1 in the SEC. And passes defended, 85.7%, number 2 in the SEC. Shane, if there is a unit that, again, they were not bad. This is not Florida and LSU, who they each return a ton on defense, but hell, they were god awful. This is a good unit returning virtually everybody back. This may be the best front 7 in the SEC. This is another reason for optimism if you're a fan of the big blue nation up here.
Well, you think of some of Mark Stoops' best years, it was good offensive line, great defense, and we got it. It's like we've got another chapter. We got another opportunity here to kind of excel and take that step forward. And that's, I would say, the reason for optimism for me is there's so much seniority on both sides of the football, so much leadership coming back on both sides of the football, and a talented. I mean, both sides. There's bits and pieces. You talk about the wide receivers earlier. You talk about that defensive line. Some are saying maybe one of the best in the country. There should be reason for optimism.
And then you take this veteran roster, Shane, again, one of the most experienced units in the conference. You add a top 25 recruiting class and a top 25 transfer class, led, of course, by Brock Vandegrift, former 5-star quarterback out of Georgia. He'd be Georgia's starting quarterback if they didn't have Carson Beck, who pretty much universally is viewed as the number one quarterback prospect in the country. And do not overlook. I don't understand why people overlook this one. Shane, linebacker Jamon Dumas-Johnson, starter, multi-year starter at Georgia. He's a national champion. He was a leader down in Athens. He's going to be a leader in Lexington. That may be the biggest transfer pickup that nobody's talking about in the entire country. Running back Chip Trainum from Ohio State. He's slotted to be our starting running back. Receiver Jamori Macklin from North Texas. He is I believe the cousin of Jeremy Macklin, former Mizzou standout. Cornerback Christian Story from Bama, and offensive lineman Jalen Farmer from Florida. So I love it if we're Kentucky. You know, a lot of these programs, you're getting a guy from North Texas, from UTEP, from Tulane. Can they burst on the scene? Kentucky says, to hell with that. We're getting Georgia guys, Bama guys, Florida guys. I think that suits them much better to have an impact immediately this fall.
And that's one thing since the portal kind of came around. Mark was there the whole time. And one thing I've enjoyed is, like you said, he's going out and getting players that play in the NFL. You know, it's not somebody they have to develop for 3 to 4 years. You know, these are guys that are going to be key contributors as soon as they walk in the door.
Right. And then just real quick, Shane, for position breakdowns, and I'm done with putting tight ends by themselves because I just rank them dead last. So I'm roping them in with the receivers, and that may be cheating. I don't care, Shane. But give me receivers and tight ends. I think that's the best position group on Kentucky's roster with guys like Barian Brown, Dane Key, Jamori Macklin, and then the tight ends Josh Gaddis and Jordan Dingle. Give me the offensive line next, bringing back 3 starters here, Shane. Left tackle Marquez Cox, center Eli Cox, not related. Yager Burton over there at right guard. And then the transfers, Gerald Mincy from Tennessee. Shane loves that guy.
I got a drink on that one.
And Jalen Farber. I think this is going to be a very solid offensive line for Kentucky. The running backs and quarterbacks, I'm kind of splitting them together because they're a little bit unknown, at least in a blue and white uniform here. But running back Chip Trainum and quarterback Brock Vandegrift, of course. Again, unknowns, new systems, new coaches for those guys. It's going to be fascinating to see how they play out. But if we got the receivers and we got the offensive line to excel in the SEC, I truly do believe.
Yeah. That's the key. And again, got to have a little lady luck on that side too, you know, keeping those guys healthy. But, you know, Brock is the ultimate X factor, and it's a gamble. I get it. You know, it's either he's going to be really great. I don't think there's a middle ground. I think he's going to be either really great, really good, or not good at all. That's kind of where I'm at. I don't think there's just a serviceable quarterback out there. And I'm leaning toward the good because I have seen flashes of it. He's got the tangibles. He is Kentucky. I mean, he looks like a Kentucky quarterback, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's been working his ass all day. You know, now he's coming in here off the farm and he's ready to play some football.
So he's either Joe Burrow or Jarrett Garantano. Is that what you're saying?
Man, I don't know if that's the comparison I would use.
I'm kidding.
I just think there's, like you said, if you remove Georgia from the situation and Kentucky lands Brock in the recruiting class, we're talking, you know what I'm saying? We're talking 5-star quarterback. We're talking somebody that, hey, at the end of the year may be one of the greatest Kentucky quarterbacks to come through there. And they've had some really good quarterbacks. So
right now on the defense, Shane, there's no wrong answer here, but I'll go with defensive line because I think they've got some studs here. I think he's the best interior defensive lineman in the entire SEC. Deion Walker leading the way, starter. Octavius Oxidine and Keyshawn Silver, both starters last year. And these guys have played a million snaps in the SEC, Shane. Trayvon Ripka, Josiah Hayes, and Khalil Saunders. So we got a very good defensive line. I'm putting that unit number 1, but I mean, we're splitting hairs here because the linebackers are just as good with J.J. Weaver, his 6 fingers back for another season. Derrick Jackson, one of the best run stoppers in the SEC at the linebacker position. All those guys have starting experience. And then Jamon Dumas-Johnson, the Georgia transfer, he's going to plug in at middle linebacker. With this line and these linebackers, it is not a stretch to say this could be the best front 7 in the entire SEC. I'm not guaranteeing it, but I'm saying they're in the conversation. And then our defensive back, Shane, you're bringing back Maxwell Hairston. He was all SEC at the corner position. Jordan Lovett and Zion Childress have played a ton of snaps at the safeties position. You're bringing back guys like J.Q. Hardaway, Jontez Dunn, and D.J. Waller, and you're bringing in the Bama transfer Christian Story. There is no weakness on Kentucky's defense, in my opinion.
No, very, very strong unit, strong coaching. Again, it's funny that people, you said people are talking about it. I don't think enough people are talking about the defense. Everybody's enamored with the offense, the weapons that they have, the mystique of Brock, but it's kind of like they put aside how good this defense was last year, and all of them coming back this season.
All right. And we're bringing back our kicker and putter. So there you go. We got special teams covered too, Shade. Not to mention Barry and Brown back there returning kicks. I mean, we could have standout special teams unit here, and that could be the difference for Kentucky winning and losing a couple of these close games. Now, as far as biggest camp questions, Shane, to me, it's kind of all about the offense and how they come together with all the new pieces. We've kind of hit on that. They're saying they're going to run a lot more up tempo in Lexington this year, so that I think that fits Brock Vandegrift's skill set. He's a huge, fast guy, 6'4", 240 some odd pounds.
A lot like me.
Yeah, exactly. He's built like cousin Shane. But one thing that I really thought was fascinating, Shane, talking to the Kentucky Sports Radio guys at Media Days, go check that interview out if you haven't already. But just the fact that they're being so quiet in Lexington. They're not letting anything out of the building when this time last year they were telling everybody and their mother just how good Devin Leary is and how far this offense has come. It's almost like they got a little secret, Shane, that they don't want to let out of the building. So I want to see that in fall camp. Any big picture things that you're looking for from Kentucky in fall camp?
Well, it's kind of not fair, but Brock, I think I just want to see him. I want to see him in any action. What is this offense going to look like? Kind of like systematically, is it going to mimic another style offense that we've seen in the SEC, that sort of thing? Or does it kind of revert back to a little bit of what Coach Stoops likes to do up there in Kentucky? So I guess those are the biggest questions for me. The other stuff is just expectations. I'm not saying Stoops is on a hot seat or anything like that, but obviously his job was talked about toward the end of last year. How do you squash that? How do you coming out, hitting the ground running, what's the buy-in with Kentucky fans up there? Because I think they're excited. Obviously they went a little bit, basketball kind of stole the headlines in the offseason, but football could quickly grab it back if they come out here and whoop some ass.
Right. So let's get into the schedule, Shane. And as always, the way we do it, we pick, or at least I do, and Shane tells me I'm completely wrong, win, loss, or toss-up for each of these games. And I try to do this part as realistic as possible. We'll get to our game-by-game picks in just a second from a Kentucky optimism standpoint. But here's the schedule, Shane, and I've got 5 games just today, knowing what we know. I think these should absolutely be wins for Kentucky. I'm going Southern Miss in the opener. That's a home game. Week 4, Ohio. That's another home game. Vanderbilt, a couple weeks later. That is also a home game. Murray State, final month of the season. And then, fair or not, Shane, Louisville, they get all this damn momentum, but they still can't beat Kentucky. Kentucky owns your ass. So give me 5 that I'm just looking at today. I'm saying these are basically guaranteed wins. Is there any other? Those are the only 5 I have right now. Is there another one where you're sitting here saying Kentucky, no excuse to lose this game or that game?
No, I think you nailed it, man. I do.
Now, that means we got a couple toss-ups here, Shane, and this is where the season is going to be defined for me. Week 2, South Carolina. You're getting them at home. Thank goodness. That's a huge break. But, heck, you've lost to them several years in a row now here. So to me, that's why it's a toss-up. At Florida, fair or not, you have owned Florida. If this was in Lexington, I'd kick that over to should be a win. But the fact it's in the swamp, that's a toss-up for me. Auburn, I think that's going to be a season-defining game for Kentucky and help, quite frankly, for Auburn as well. And then you'll probably, again, maybe I'm going overboard here, Shane. People think this is some kind of personal vendetta at this point, but I ain't buying none of this smoke out of Texas. I know it's at Texas. Most people will have this as an automatic loss for Kentucky. I see it as a toss-up because I think by this point of the season, Texas will be exposed a little bit. And again, exposed is probably the wrong word, but just week after week after week of playing SEC opponents, I think it's going to catch up to them. I'm not guaranteeing you're going to beat them or anything crazy like that, but to me, that's a toss-up game. I think this is one that Texas could lose.
Well, that is your opinion, Mike. Again, what does Texas look like November 23rd? What does Kentucky look like by that time? We don't know that. So what I may think is a loss now most likely could be a toss by the end of the season. So yeah, I'm not going to argue with it. You put so much effort into this one.
So then I have just 3 games, Shane, that I think, quite frankly, I mean, I'm just trying to be fair here. I don't think Kentucky, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I have to sit here today and say these are likely losses. I'm going Georgia at home. Quite frankly, everybody's a loss to Georgia. At Ole Miss, and again, I think Ole Miss is going to be elite of elite. That's kind of why I'm there. And then at Tennessee, who Tennessee has owned you. So would you change your mind? Would you throw Tennessee as a toss? Ole Miss, Georgia, any of those?
I'm more likely to do Tennessee than Texas, just because the rivalry. But again, I get the history. There's a lot of bourbon behind me, so I totally get that. But it is one of those games. Even last year was a game until it wasn't. So I would put Tennessee as a toss before I'd put Texas.
Okay. Well, we know how you love the fake UT, but that's neither here nor there. So again, that's how I see it: win, loss, or toss. Let's break it down game by game. And as always, the comments are going to go fire. They don't understand this. We're picking these games as Kentucky homers, how we see it playing out. And no doubt in my mind, Shane, if I got my big blue glasses on, we are going to whoop the hell out of Southern Miss in the opener. Now, I do think that's a little bit of a tricky game. And tricky, I just mean like you may not beat the spread because we got so many new pieces on offense. If we come out here and score, you guarantee me, Shane, that Kentucky's scoring 35 or more in the opener. I'm saying we're crushing Southern Miss. Right. But I think realistically, it may be like a 24-10 type game. I don't know what the spread is right now, but it just may take a week or two to get that offense going. Is that fair?
Yeah, but problem is they don't have a week or two. They really got to get the ground running. So I'm kind of with you, and I would expect more, maybe not so much like finding yourself, but I would expect more, maybe a conservative offense, conservative defense plan type deal, which is going to result in a closer football, maybe a lower scoring football game. So it's not necessarily, I think Kentucky would be bad week 1 and great week 5. It's just, again, all looks good in practice, all look good in spring game. What does it look like when the lights are actually on? So yeah, I would expect more of a conservative here.
It's almost like Missouri last year, Shane. I don't remember this, where they look shaky early. And then when they come to the Kansas State game, and they said, well, hell, I'll be honest, we kept a lot of our playbook, new things, because they don't want to give it away because this is such a big game. Week 2, Shane, biggest game of the season, one of the biggest games in Kentucky that could define the season, South Carolina. And, boy, I truly think this could be a toss-up type game, but our buddy, shout out Nick Roush, he's got me convinced. How in the hell are you going to pick against Kentucky and this elite front 7 going up against South Carolina, which their offensive line was horrible? They got a new quarterback, which Lenore Sellers could be awesome, but is he going to be awesome by week 2? There's lingering doubts there. They don't have many elite receivers. They got talented guys, but guys that have not proven it. So if Kentucky can slow down South Carolina on the ground, I think they're going to win this game. They may even dominate it, Shane. So it is a crossroads game. But I'm not sitting here saying, South Carolina's got a great shot to beat you. I just think if you lose it, season could go sideways in a hurry. So this is a must-win. Give me Kentucky. Give me Kentucky big.
Mike, we talked about pressured games, and three of the pressured games I've got is Florida, the Miami game. I've got this one in South Carolina, and I think Arkansas, Oklahoma State. Those are games that you've just got to win, or the opposing team is just going to spiral out of, like you kind of mentioned there. I feel like coming into this one, Shane Beamer has a lot to lose. The pressure is on, and I'm not saying he's on the hot seat, even though I kind of am. It starts after you get your ass kicked by Kentucky up there in Lexington, brother. This is a big game this is a launch pad for Kentucky season, and this is the spiral down for South Carolina. Best case scenario for them Wildcats.
Now, if you go 2-0, again, Shane, you got another home game here. Georgia comes to town. They've beaten you 14 years in a row.
Yeah.
But a lot of these, quite frankly, Shane, Kentucky's given them as tight a game as damn near everybody. Mm-hmm. I know Missouri has given Georgia fits the last couple of years, but Kentucky's been the closest too. I would say that over the last 5-6 years out of the East to challenge, and challenge is probably not even the right word. Hell, how can we say challenge when it's a 14-game winning streak? But again, you get your former quarterback, former middle linebacker. There's going to be an axe to grind, Shane. Georgia coming to Kentucky. Georgia will be coming off a Clemson game. They're looking ahead to Alabama, perhaps. There's upset in the air, Shane, when Georgia comes to Lexington. Upset Kentucky fans. I'm sorry. It's Georgia wins that one comfortably.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to be like normal games, tight in the second quarter, starts to pull away a little bit in the third, and then all of a sudden we're looking at a Georgia victory. So I do think that gap is getting narrower, but it's still too far for Kentucky.
Right. But that gap is pretty wide between Kentucky and Ohio, Shane. So it's a nice rebound here. Again, I love this schedule, the way it sets up to start fast. And who knows? Maybe you shock the world and you can go 4-0. But I think worst case scenario, you're 3-1. And again, that sets up for this second, the half of the season, essentially, to have a really good start. I mean, I think Ohio, there's a real shot they get their doors blown off here by the Kentucky Wildcats.
Mike, you talked about the losses and tosses and all that. I look at it as 4 teams that most likely are losses. Best case scenario, probably an 8-4 situation. Mm-hmm. But coming into September 28th, if you were going to catch one of those that I've got penciled as a loss, I think it's Ole Miss. And the reason I like this game, Mike, so much is because Kentucky's battle tested at this point. They've played South Carolina. They've played Georgia, probably the number 1 team in the country. Up to this point, Ole Miss has played no one. If you pull up their schedule, it is very, very vanilla. The confidence is in the air. The cockiness may show up. The lack of preparation when Kentucky comes to town. So if I were predicting an upset, and for those that are listening, Ole Miss has got Furman, MTSU, Wake Forest, and Georgia Southern. Jeez, those are places you go to get medical attention, not to play football, Kentucky coming into that one. That's the one I've got as your potential upset, and just keep it circled.
And quite frankly, Shane, I'll throw up the home records the last 5 seasons. Again, Ole Miss has been pretty solid, 25-8 the last 5 seasons at home. But again, it's not like it's a murderer's row. I mean, it's essentially the same as Missouri. It's close to A&M, which again, these are fine home field advantages. But I think, quite frankly, what this says more than anything is just Ole Miss has been really good the last couple of years under Lane Kiffin. But you're absolutely right, Shane, because I could certainly see a scenario where Ole Miss is feeling great. They may be saying, "Oh hell, we got the best defense in the damn SEC because we've only allowed 6 points on the year." But it's because you played a damn 4 jokesters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you could get exposed. Maybe too strong a word. I don't think you're going to get your doors blown off at home. But there could be areas of your team that you are confident in that are really issues. Yeah. So this is going to be a paramount game. But again, having said all that, I mean, I think best case scenario, it's a toss-up for Kentucky. So I have to give them a loss there as well.
Yeah.
But when I say that, you got to realize that I'm sitting here telling you I think Ole Miss could win the SEC. I think they're a lock for the college football playoff. This says more about Ole Miss than it does Kentucky, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And things like this happen. I just did a countdown, 30-day countdown. It was Louisiana Lafayette. 30-point underdogs going to 6th-ranked Florida. And then it took a miracle for them to just get in the ball game and then a blocked punt with 2 seconds left. So they got the victory. And if you're looking at just Wikipedia, you're just like, oh, that's just another victory. But you don't realize how they had to crawl through that whole football game because they came in overconfident and cocky. So,
right. Yeah. And if you're Kentucky, Shane, again, let's hope you win the Ole Miss game, but even if you fall, you got 2 weeks to prepare, kind of lick your wounds for what is essentially a bye week coming to your town here, Vanderbilt. The schedule placement is kind in that sense, a real opportunity to get off the mat. And again, worst case scenario here, you're 4-2, and I realize that's not the standard in Lexington,
right?
But well, I think that's a decent start considering who you've played. Maybe 2 top 5 teams to open the first 6 games of the season.
Yeah, as tough as Kentucky's schedule is, I do like the game placement. Like you said, Ole Miss, Georgia, probably 2 top 5 teams. But after that, you get a bye. You get to come home. You got Vanderbilt. Some of your tougher games, the Tennessee, the Texas, it's followed up by weak-ass opponents, So
right.
I think and at home. So I think there is something to be said there. But, yes, at this point, if you're sitting there at, 3-2, but you lost to 2 top 5 teams, I think you're feeling pretty good, especially after you get this easy dub against Vanderbilt.
Now it will come a critical game, though, Shane, that could dictate the season at Florida. You've whooped Florida, you own them, and Florida, just in case Kentucky fans, I'm sure you've heard the news, but here's their schedule. They could be in shambles by this point in time.
Yep.
And I don't think they will be. I think they're going to be better than anticipated. But critical, they're coming off at Tennessee.
I think they'll be in shambles.
and every Tennessee fan knows, every Florida fans know, whoever loses that damn game, you never have a good year. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there is a world where Florida is 5-0, and they get embarrassed on Rocky Top. And then all of a sudden, their dream season, they haven't even hit the stretch run of their season. So I don't know. I think there's a real opportunity here for Kentucky to have 1 loss turn into 2 for them Florida Gators. Optimistically, Shane, how the hell could I pick the Florida Gators to beat the Kentucky Wildcats based on the last couple seasons that I've seen? Give me Kentucky, go on the road, and probably end the Billy Napier era down there in Gainesville.
Yeah, I was strolling through Kentucky's football social media earlier today, and I saw something about Cash Daniels, and I thought, man, how far have we come? From selling tickets to the parking lot to smashing water bottles down there in Gainesville. So I'm with you. This is not your Papaw's Kentucky Florida matchup. This is a new matchup that Kentucky kind of owns. They kicked their ass last year. They're probably going to do it again this year because of schedule placement. I think when you're looking at Florida, they got Tennessee and Georgia sandwiched in the middle as Kentucky at home. They're probably already spiraling themselves. Billy's already put his house up for sale. He's seeing if he could go back to Louisiana. So I just think that this is a big one. And again, just it's going to carry over that spiral effect that Billy Napier's in.
Right. And then the following week, Shane, we get Auburn coming to town. Again, a lot of toss-up games on this schedule. So there's going to be a lot of one-possession type games that they're going to come down to the fourth quarter. They're going to come down to who makes the mistakes. But again, you're telling me, Shane, Auburn, they have a really good running back, Jarquez Hunter, but they basically have an entirely new receiving core. They got a quarterback that no one believes in except for Hugh Freeze for some reason. You're telling me that team is going to go on the road with this defense and have their way? I ain't buying it. So, again, I think this matchup really favors Kentucky against Auburn. And again, look at what Auburn's got. Again, schedule placement's critical here. Auburn will be coming off of Oklahoma, Georgia, and Missouri. back to back to back before they get to and hell, throw in Arkansas there too. I mean, 5 SEC games in a row. Auburn's going to be beaten and battered coming into this matchup. There's no guarantee. This truly is a toss-up type game, but the placement significantly favors the Kentucky Wildcats. You're getting them at home. I got all the confidence in the world. That this is probably the two coaches I talk bad about the most, but I got a lot more confidence in Mark Stoops than I do Hugh Freeze.
Well, you talk about this game in particular. It's out of the toss-up games, it's the one I'm worried about the most.
Really?
Just because, there's a real scenario, my scenario, that they're 5-2 at this point. Can you pull up that record one more time? So Georgia and
Mizzou back to back on the road.
Go back to Kentucky. So let's say Georgia and Ole Miss. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you're 5-2 coming into Auburn at home. You're looking forward to that Tennessee matchup, that Texas matchup. I'm not saying that Kentucky has a trap game on their schedule, but this is when you can't afford to take your foot off the gas either, Mike. And because Hugh Freeze does show up. Look at the Iron Bowl last year. There's moments they had flashes with Auburn, and I think these two teams, if you're talking about their strength and weaknesses, Kentucky's strength is where Auburn is the weakest at. So you think that this should be an easy victory. I think this is a close football game, but I still like Kentucky to win. All that.
What's Hugh been DMing you, Shay, to buy into all this BS?
I'm telling you, man, there's something about Auburn. I think people, I'm not saying they'll ever be top 25 this year, but I guarantee that they'll get a top 25 win this year.
Okay. Well,
maybe this one. Who knows? Kentucky may be top 25 at this point.
Now, it'll be interesting to see where you go with this one, Shade. At Tennessee, next game. Okay, we could be 6-2. Imagine this showdown here. Kentucky could have a better record than Tennessee by this point in time when this game hits us early November. But quite frankly, Tennessee is just a house of horrors for Kentucky. What Florida is to Tennessee, Tennessee is to Kentucky. So, again, on the road, tough environment. This game, I will give Kentucky this, and I think this game means more to Kentucky. But it hasn't really mattered on the field the last couple of seasons. I have to go Tennessee because I think they're going to be really good. But, Tennessee, again, I don't want to sit here and project injuries and things of that nature, but you could make the case Tennessee is thin at a couple key positions, particularly on the offensive side of the football. If they're missing a couple pieces, there's no doubt in my mind Kentucky can win this game, but I have to favor Tennessee given the location, how good I think Tennessee will be, and just the history between these teams.
Well, I think if you're going to get Tennessee, this has got to be the year. Slow it. If anybody can slow down the running game, it's that defensive front. And if you cut Sampson out, you keep Nico contained, and then all of a sudden you got yourselves a damn ball game. And I think that's important too because years past, Kentucky gets down, it's over. That's been the Heupel recipe. Let's just get up a couple of scores and Kentucky can't come back. Now they've got the weapons that can go toe-to-toe with the Tennessee Volunteers. This is going to be a hell of a football game, Mike. And optimistically, as a Kentucky fan, I want to give you the win. And I will for the first half. But I think Tennessee edges you out there in the second because they kind of got that number. So don't say it won't happen. I think that Tennessee should be on high alert when Kentucky rolls into town because, again, this may be the best football team they've faced since Heupel's been there.
Right. Oh, man, you almost had me there, Shane. I thought you were going to bet some bourbon the other way there for a minute.
No, I can't do that. All these bottles, it's like, I want to be extremely optimistic, but then I'm reminded behind me that, they don't win that often in Knoxville.
Now, next week, I get a pick your score type game. Murray State at home. You get 2 weeks to prepare. It's interesting, Shay. You get this Ole Miss game, then you get 2 weeks. You get Tennessee, you got 2 weeks. So from that sense, if that is two of your tougher games, you got plenty of time to work on things and probably, quite frankly, Shane, spend a lot of the bye week getting ready for Texas. So Murray State, easy win. And then we come to Austin, Shane. Apparently, it's the mecca of football and college football. I missed the memo, but apparently they're going to win the SEC. They're going to the college football playoff. Steve Sarkisian can do no wrong, Shane, with them damn Lamborghinis down there in Austin, Texas. I ain't buying all that BS, but I also am not buying a Kentucky win for all those things I say. Just because who knows? It's late in the season. It's on the road. Yeah. I don't quite frankly think Texas is that great of a home field advantage, but it can be. We saw it a couple years ago when Alabama went down there. It looked like a damn house of horrors for the Crimson Tide. They should have lost that football game. So Texas fans can get up, and when they do, they have a great home field advantage. Will they get up for Kentucky? I don't know. Maybe that's a selling point for why another reason why Kentucky can go in there and pull the upset. But and you could even sell me on the fact, Shane. Again, looking at Texas' schedule, who do they got the next week? Trap game city right there. Kentucky coming to town with A&M right there. So again, I don't think this is. I would bet you, Shane, that 95% of Kentucky fans are saying, well, hell, we can't beat Texas. I'm telling you right now, they can beat Texas. I really do think they can. I'm not going to be that bold to say that they guarantee it, but I think there is a really good shot, like a 40% shot that they go into Austin and get that win.
Yeah, well, when I look at Kentucky, one of the things we talked about this offseason was, and it seems like it kept festering. Every time we talked about trap games, we'd look at that schedule and we'd see Kentucky sitting there. Kentucky can spoil some seasons. Now, they may not make the playoffs, but they may keep a couple of teams from getting there, and I think that's what's exciting about this year is it's not a. I don't think they take a step back. I think they take a step forward. This program is going to look so much better by the end of this year, and that Texas matchup, who knows? We may throw all this out and say Kentucky's got themselves a shot, but as of now in July, I still got to give Texas the edge.
Right. And then in the season finale here, Shane, regular season.
They'll be sick of you teasing Orange, won't they, by that point?
But we're rolling into the season finale, Shane, with a 5-game winning streak over Louisville. We own their ass, and I don't care all this momentum. I do think Brom is a really good coach. But it don't matter, Shane. It don't matter on this Saturday because Kentucky shows up for this game. This means more to them. They own the rivalry. Should be another great game. But give me Kentucky and give me Kentucky big with them L's down there.
Oh, yeah. And that's been the trendy pick, this offseason is Louisville's going to beat Kentucky. Louisville's back, baby. Louisville's going to win the AC. Whatever. Get that shit out of here. We say that every year, and then Kentucky goes up there and does what they do, and that's whoop their ass.
Yep. So you're going, I think we both went 8-4. For Kentucky, right? So, I mean, optimistically, and again, you could go 9. It's not going to stun us if you go 9-3. Hell, even 10-2. I don't think it's completely off the table.
So let's say 9-3.
Yeah.
If you pull that schedule up, 9-3. Where's that ninth win most likely coming from?
Either Texas or Ole Miss, because I'm starting to buy into what you're selling.
Yeah.
Again, Ole Miss, Renegades, free agents, all this. You're going Renegades versus culture and established and toughness. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And how tough? That's a big thing with Ole Miss. How tough are they? Yeah. Again, we can love the pieces, high flying, Lane Kiffin's tweeting all this nonsense, but where's the chemistry? Where are they on the line of scrimmage? Kentucky's going to be damn good on the line of scrimmage. So I think Ole Miss is a possibility. Again, all these games. That's the beauty of Kentucky, Shane. I think every game, minus the Georgia one, is a winnable game.
Yeah.
Now, you're not going to win them all, clearly, because this is so damn hard in the SEC. But I think 6.5, I'm super confident in the over. But, again, 8-4, 9-3, I think that is very, very realistic for them Wildcats.
Yeah, I do too. Very realistic. So, again, Big Sieves, and I'm looking at that over-under. This is one of those teams that I like to put a little money on just because I think they're going to exceed expectations this year. And I'm not just saying that optimistically. I'm just saying that because they got it. They got the pieces. They've got an SEC football team that can go the distance. And little Lady Luck on their side, who knows what will happen.
Now, last thing we like to do, Shane, the 3 most important games to win this season. And we're not saying, you could say just Georgia, Texas, and Tennessee, and then we'll go undefeated. That's not what I'm trying to say here. I'm trying to say you got to win these games to have a good season, and I've ranked them 1 through 3, 1 being the most important.
Okay.
I already got mine, but where do you think I'm going with number 1?
South Carolina.
Bingo. I mean, that has to be the one. That's got to be a win to get where you want to be. You cannot be losing to South Carolina again. Put Beamer ball down, the Sunglass Bowl, whatever you want to call it. Got to get that one. How about number 2? Where would you go there?
Florida Gators.
Oh, I got them number 3. So at Florida, that is a huge game. But I got one more that I think is like a crossroads type game.
Auburn.
Auburn, you nailed it, buddy. You're too good at this, buddy. We've been doing this too long.
Yeah, are we related or what?
But is there any others that you would kind of consider most important games to win to get where you want to be this fall?
No, I think you nailed those 3. I think that Louisville is, as much as I talk about them, a little tricky there after that Texas game. At that point, maybe the season did go or didn't go. You never want to take your foot off the gas with especially any rival team. So that's the only other one I would mention.
All right, buddy. Well, hey, that's going to do it for a Kentucky fall preview show. Again, we got more of these on the way, but I always enjoy kicking back and running through these schedules and picking these teams through. But, who knows? This could be this year's Missouri. I don't think that's unreasonable at all. They just need a couple pieces to hit, and things that are question marks, if they become strengths, Kentucky's going to be one hell of a team to watch this fall.
Absolutely. I think they got the season ticket holders are going to get their money's worth this year, Mike.
Yep. Well, all right, buddy, that's going to do it for this episode of the show. I appreciate you as always. I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one.
All right, see you guys. Go Cats.